Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 10 of Intentional Spiritual Living with Brian. Here we are at the final episode of this season. Time has flown. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. And we're going to close with some good stuff today. I think you're really going to like it. So we're going to close out our 10-part How to Build Your Crystal Toolkit series with Sunstone. A favorite of mine for, I feel, a very interesting reason that I want to share with you. And then, as promised, I'm going to go over, I think, 6 of the sacred geometry shapes that are used often in crystal grids and assembling crystal grids for various reasons. And we'll talk about how to use them and why to use them, a little bit of a deep dive there. And finally, like we did last week, we did an overall deep dive of the suit of Wands, my favorite suit in a tarot deck. This week we are going to do the suit of Swords, which is my least favorite suit in a tarot deck for reasons I will detail. It's a tough suit. Has everything to do with our inner critic, and we'll talk about that and spotting these patterns like we talked about with Wands and kind of putting together. We'll do it in another season, the other 2, so you can kind of pull some information out about how to put together patterns and repeating patterns in tarot readings to really get a quality message out to your client. So with those topics, we have a full episode in front of us. So now is the time to get started. All right, friends, let's get started with Sunstone, the final choice in my 10-part series of how to build your crystal toolkit and use these crystals, not just sit them on the counter and look at them. And so Sunstone is an interesting one. I think it's one of my favorites, but I probably say that about all of them because I love crystals and I have a huge toolkit, but there are certain crystals that I carry with me all the time, and a quality piece of Sunstone is one of them for a very particular use for me. So again, we talk about Googling these messages and these meanings, because if you Google what are the metaphysical meanings or spiritual uses of Sunstone, you will get as many different answers as times you Google it. It's just the way it is. Everybody has an opinion, and this is kind of not exact science. I mean, there is some science to vibrating crystals vibrating on higher elevations and planes than we do, and the faster vibrating ones maybe uplift your mood, lower. It's pseudoscience there, but a lot of this is just opinion, based upon. Sometimes you can get into the geology of the rock. You know, there's a lot of copper in a rock, and what is copper good for? Combine that with a lot of rocks are based on a quartz. We know that's the master crystal from episode 1, that type of thing. But and a lot of it is just personal feeling. And so, as I keep telling you, these are my experiences with this. And let's get to Sunstone. So, at the core of Sunstone's meaning for me, by nature of the name and what it looks like, I'm actually holding a piece right now that I had in my pocket today. It's a beautiful stone. It's a joy-inducing stone, and that's a universally agreed upon truth with Sunstone. It induces joy in many of us. But that's kind of boring, right? I mean, so does golden healer, so does rose quartz for some people, so does amethyst. So these joy-inducing stones are far and many. So then we start adding our own experiences with them. And so for me, with Sunstone, it does induce joy, and when I am feeling a little more joyful, I'm kind of a persnickety person from time to time, a curmudgeon, if you will. I'm not proud of that, but it's just the world kind of makes us that way sometimes, and I'm kind of a doubter. And if I need to be in a position of leadership, if I'm running Crooked Cottage escape rooms for the day and I'm making major business decisions on a new room we might be building, or if I'm about to do a huge order for Raven's Cauldron and it's, multiple thousands of dollars in crystals, and I'm feeling a little shaky, like, should I be doing this, and am I making the right decision? There's where Sunstone comes in. It is an amplification of good leadership. It's documented a little bit if you read about it, but that's what it really does for me. It helps me to chill out, let the anxiety fly away, and smile a little bit. So, because when I'm happier and I'm a little less heavy in spirit, I can make it beautiful, smart, logic, educated decisions. And for me, when I'm running two different businesses and other businesses outside of this that I do, and taking care of the home and stuff, it can be a little bit overwhelming and stuff. And I need to always be hyper focused on making the best decisions, the best leadership decisions, because this is my own company. This is what I do. And so Sunstone is the go-to with that. I'm not going to talk about it much deeper than that, because that's the only real reason I use it for, is when I really want to induce a lightheartedness about me, but keep a shrewd, air-like brain. When I say air-like, because of the pseudosaurs we're going to talk about, logic, intellect, that type of thing. If I need to tap into all that and be happy about it and make good decisions, Sunstone allows me to do just that. So that is our 10th and final crystal that we're going to talk about in building your crystal kit. And I really hope that you guys have gotten something out of this. There's not a lot of this stuff out there available, and that's what I chose to do for this season, was because yes, there are millions of sentences and words about the meanings of crystals, but again, they're just people's opinions, and I really wanted to give you the sort of agreed upon truth about them and how I use them and what I do with them. Whether it would be keeping it in my pocket, whether it be building crystal grids, keeping it in my office, keeping it near me, keeping it on my nightstand, that type of thing. You can really achieve some beautiful things when you really start to vibe with your crystals and you really start to get to know them, and not just get to know them based upon what your best friend Sue, for instance, tells you that it did for her, or Brian, who you're listening to a podcast. These are just guidelines. This is just how it works for me, and you might find the same thing. You may find that when you're in a horribly bad mood and you just want to hide from the world, a piece of sunstone might bring you completely out of that. And that's a different meaning for you. But get to know them. And the 10 stones that I chose this season are power stones. They're stones that I would never, ever be without in my life. And you'll notice I don't talk a lot about the protective stones and stuff. And I talked a little bit about that with Rainbow Obsidian last week. It's protecting us from ourselves. And that's why I love Rainbow Obsidian, because there's not a lot of negative energy and penetrating my world. There's not a lot of, dark energy and entities and stuff in my house. I don't have that problem. So I don't need a lot of the protective stones. But what I do need protection from is my sinking thoughts, my thoughts that pre-close things that I'm angry about or that I am jaded about, and I need to snap out of that and see things for what they really are. And so that's why I use Rainbow Obsidian, which we talked about last week. And so in Sunstone, it's not about just feeling joy. It's that joy which leads to prosperous and logical and well thought out decisions that Sunstone shines for me. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive on these 10 crystals. I hope you're building your crystal toolkit and vibing with them and seeing change in your life, because I promise you, if you really take it seriously and you get to know them, you'll never look back. All right, friends. Coming up, we are going to deep dive into sacred geometry shapes and what they are good for building crystal grids, as promised a couple episodes ago. All right, let's get into this, because this is a really fun topic. So a couple weeks ago, I actually laid out a fast manifestation crystal grid for you on the podcast. Talked about using the spiral sacred geometry shape for continuity, and that's one that I use often. But there are tons of different sacred geometry shapes. There are books on it. So I've picked out a few of them to talk about today and just kind of go over it with you, tell you kind of how it works and what that's for. To review, crystal grids, they use the principles of sacred geometry in an effort to amplify the energy of the crystals that we're putting on the grid. and kind of creating a harmonious flow between the crystals and the energy to achieve a specific intention that we're looking for. In that particular one, we were talking about fast manifestation, but we could be healing or abundance, spiritual growth, protection. And each of those shapes has different meanings. It's not hard and fast that you actually have to use those meanings, but it is something good to think about when you're doing it. And so we're going to start with the circle. Doesn't seem real sacred or geometrical, but it is a sacred geometry, and it's for unity and perfection. Listen to me. Unity and protection. And so circle is a universal symbol that represents wholeness and protection. And it also signifies cycles of life, eternal life, and infinity. So it's not unlike the spiral that I use, but a circle is a little bit different. And so for crystal grids, the circle acts as a boundary, and it's holding and containing all of the energy that we're harnessing in these crystal grids, which can be very powerful within that circle. It's also often used for protection, again, protection from negative energy, protection from your own self, from your own negative thoughts. Focused energy field, and you place all the crystals inside of that circle and at key points around the circle, and you shield the different crystals with their different meanings to come up with your protective or unifying crystal grid that you're going to have out for several days. I love using this one for protection. I teach a class using a circle of protection, so one to really, really think about, and a simple one at that. Up next, we're going to talk about the flower of life. Why would you use, and you can buy crystal grids. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. It could be, you can draw these, you can print out a piece of paper with these, you can actually have them burnt into a crystal grid board, you can have cloths, it doesn't matter. That's the least important thing about doing a crystal grid. Your intention and the crystals that you choose to put in there are what's important. So the flower of life is a very powerful symbol of creation. Has everything to do with manifestation, the interconnectedness of all life, blueprint of the universe. That's what it represents. Its geometric arrangement of overlapping circles forms the basis of a ton of different sacred geometry patterns, and this is just one of them. A crystal grid that would use the flower of life would be great for manifestation, because it's connecting you to the universal energies and flows of abundance in the universe. Crystals that you might want to use for that would be citrine, pyrite, clear quartz, of course. And you want to put those at points of intersection on the flower of life grid to get what you want. And it helps with manifesting goals, enhancing your spiritual growth, and simply connecting to the divine energy, which of course we all really want to do. Okay, let's talk about Metatron's cube next. Used typically for balance, foundation, and transformation. Metatron's cube is actually a sacred geometric figure that contains all of the platonic solids. The platonic solids are geometric shapes, and you can buy a platonic solid set in different crystals, and that's what I highly recommend using for a Metatron's cube crystal grid. It's said to represent the balance and harmony of the cosmos, integrating both masculine and feminine energies, and it's a very powerful one. And if you're going with the whole platonic solids usage, you simply cannot go wrong if you want to transform and balance the energy in your life, transform, becoming a better version of yourself, transform into the person you want to be, balancing or foundational energy. If you can get things out of control and you're not really focusing, that it's used to clear away blockages. And it can also be used heavily for spiritual evolution. Next, let's talk about the hexagon sacred geometry shape for a crystal grid, having everything to do with harmony and balance. Hexagon by science is a symbol of harmony and balance found in nature, honeycombs, snowflakes, for instance. It's representative of the equilibrium, if you will, between the spiritual and material worlds. You use it in a crystal grid for creating harmony in your surroundings or within inside yourself. It's effective for balancing your own personal relationships, emotional healing, and grounding energy. Good stones to use for these harmony and balancing type of crystal grids would be things like hematite, any sort of jasper, and garnet. And you put those at the vertices of the hexagon, and it stabilizes and balances energy. Up next after that, we are going to talk about the square, stability and foundation. This is one I do use often. Anytime I'm doing a new project where I need to shine and I need to be a badass at it, the most important thing you can do is have a stable foundation, and so the square is great for that. On paper, the square would represent things like structure, foundation, stability. Think about the suit of pentacles, the king of pentacles, actually. In tarot, very much the same. It's a grounding shape, and it brings order and practical energy into your life. And so crystal grids with a square layout are ideal for creating stability and order in your personal or professional life. Often you do those for jobs and new projects, that type of thing. Grounding crystals to use would be like tiger's eye, red tiger's eye, red jasper, black obsidian, and put those on the four corners to set a strong energetic foundation. And so when you need long-term focus, then you really want to do a square crystal grid. And it's very similar to the circle, where we're putting that energy inside and protecting us from what we need to get done and how we need to shine. That is 5. I'm going to do one more for you folks. There are plenty of other sacred geometry, but I know that this can be a lot to listen to, and you're probably trying to write things down and that type of thing. And these are the basic ones that I use. Honestly, the one I use the most is the spiral that we talked about in episode 8. But now we're going to talk about another manifestation sacred geometry shape, and that is called the triangle. It's similar. Triangle is symbolic of manifestation and action, and actually ascension. It represents a connection between the mind, body, and spirit, or the divine trinity. But at its core, it's used for, in crystal gridding, it's used for manifestation. And so the triangle grid is perfect for focused energy work, such as manifesting a goal or trying to come up with spiritual growth. I say spiritual growth because a lot of people are seeking that, and they do spell work, they get tarot readings, they read books, they do crystal grids, they get herbs, anything to grow and get more spiritual. And so this energy is used to direct energy upwards for growth and expansion. And if you want to push it pointing down, it's for grounding and protection. But I always kind of go the up way on this one. Clear quartz is a great one for this when you're going up. Green aventurine and citrine have everything to do with manifestation and prosperous manifestation. It doesn't always mean money, but getting things done and finishing the task at hand and shining while you do it. So those are 6 sacred geometry shapes that you can use for your crystal grids. There are many others, and I really suggest that you all research them, because crystal gridding is such a powerful, powerful activity to do. In many ways, it's more powerful than just doing a quick ritual or even a long-term ritual where you have to grab ingredients and do it. I love doing those things, but you will get just as much powerful results when you do crystal grids, because you're harnessing all that energy with crystals in a very ancient shape and you're leaving it intact. That's what I love about crystal grids. You leave it there until it is done. Whereas a spell, you do it on a Wednesday night and then you hope for the best. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I do spells and rituals and ceremonial stuff all the time. But if I really want to get down to brass tacks and get down to business and make things happen, I always turn to my crystal toolkit and build myself a crystal grid. I hope that has been very beneficial for you. Crystal gridding is something near and dear to my heart. And I'm actually, Raven's Cauldron, our YouTube channel, I'm just starting to ramp up the videos on that. And when I get those done, I'm going to do several live crystal grids on there. So definitely look forward to that coming up in the future. Coming up right now, we are going to talk about our deep dive into the Tarot Suit of Swords and how you can spot patterns and interpret these kind of tough cards in your personal readings. All right, our final section of season 3, and it is the Suit of Swords. A very tough suit, in my opinion. I get tons and tons of heavy-duty sword readings in my professional tarot readings that I do, and I've studied this suit in tarot extensively because it's an affliction suit for me a lot of times, and we're going to talk about just why. So, the suit of swords in tarot is associated with the element of air. And the swords represent mind, reason, intellect, conflict, truth. And the suit delves deeply into the realms of thought and communication and how we navigate conflict, whether internal or external. And they're often seen as challenging cards because we frequently deal with difficulties and conflict. But a lot of times the conflict from the suit of swords is just drummed up in our own head, and that's why they're kind of tough, if you will. So some of the key themes in the suit of swords, before we go through some of the cards, like we did last time, would be, again, thoughts and intellect. And the swords are symbolic of the mind and how we use our thoughts and intellect to shape our lives and navigate life's challenges. And it reflects on the importance of clear thinking and reasoning and mental clarity, especially when it comes to decision making and problem solving. But where it comes into trouble with thoughts and intellect is that we can preconceive things that are not true, and we can make them up in our head. I often use an example of when I get a heavy duty sword reading and I have to talk to someone. You know, when you get out of the shower sometimes and you want to run past the mirror so you don't see yourself because you hate how you look. It's that type of thing. That's not true necessarily. That's just what you've come up with. That's your opinion. And some of the harshest opinions that we carry around in our life are in our own head, and they're about us. It's our inner critic. Other key themes for the suit of swords is communication, part of the air element. It focuses on how we communicate with others and ourselves is the important one. And it includes verbal and written communication, honesty, and the impact of our words, realizing that words matter. Misunderstandings, using harsh words and harsh statements, and conflicts in communication are represented all in the suit of swords. Conflict and struggle as well. Suit of swords is notorious for representing conflict, external and internal. These cards in this suit often reflect upon strife and challenges and battles with ourselves and others, but mostly ourselves, really. And they can signify, the struggle for truth and integrity and justice. And they can also represent mental and emotional turmoil. A suit often addresses the more challenging aspects of our human experience, and that's what makes this a tough suit. Anxiety, stress, betrayal, grief. And they appear during times of mental strain and emotional conflict, and that's why you have to really pay attention to these when they come up in a reading, because it means that somebody is hurting, if you will. We have a human soul in front of us that's hurting, and it's our job as tarot readers to kind of help them through that, if you will. The zodiac signs for the suit of swords are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, and it's linked to the intellectual and communicative nature of swords. Often associated with the season of autumn, it represents a time for contemplation, rational decision-making before we go introspective in winter. So I talked about the Ace of Wands last time and how aces they're exciting, they're jubilant, they're highly energetic because it's a possibility, it's potential. But where we come into things is we kind of need to follow through, if you will. And so I always tell people you have a new opportunity, but we really need to nurture it and cultivate it if we want it to work. It's not just going to pop out of the sky for you. But we already talked about that with swords. So I'm not going to, or with wands, I'm not going to talk about the Ace of Swords today. I'm actually going to talk about the Nine of Swords. I get this card so often in readings for people, and it just goes to show how accurate tarot can be in a real life setting. And when I say in a real life setting, I always let my querent hold my cards. That's a taboo subject with certain people, but I need their energy. If you come to get a tarot reading with me, I've been using the same set of cards for decades. Yes, you're going to touch them. Yes, you're going to shuffle them because I need you on them, because that's how we're going to get the right reading. And so the Nine of Swords comes up a lot, and it's that black background with all those swords sitting on the wall, and there's a figure with his or her face buried in their hands. It's like the middle of the night and they can't sleep. And it's a card of anxiety, nightmares, and mental anguish. And a lot of people go through this on the regular. It's reflecting sleepless nights, worry, how your mind will not shut off. And you are consumed by fear, or even worse, regret. And it really goes down and boils down to the overthinking of situations and internal fears that need to be dealt with, if you will. Such a powerful card. And I actually like to see it come up. I don't like to see it come up because I don't want anybody suffering. But when it does come up, it is so helpful because it sheds light on the matter to someone, and it helps them kind of deal with it, if you will. Now, last time I talked about the Page of Wands, and I'm actually going to talk about the Page of Swords today. We talked a little bit about how the court cards, the pages, knights, queens, and kings are energies. And really, I don't focus so much on quadrants of life, even though that is documented in a lot of tarot books. You know, the person that's from 0 to 18 is a page, and 18 to 39 ish is a knight, and so on and so on. And they're quadrants of life, but it's the energy, and it's nothing to do with how old you are. You know, you could be a 10-year-old and you could get 4 kings in your reading because you're hitting it on all 8 cylinders for what you're talking about. So don't ever think about it that way. But pages I love because they're that youthful energy where you were less jaded, where you didn't have the answer to everything, and you were curious and thirsting for those answers, and you were looking at things in different ways. Whereas when you get a little longer down the road and you get into the queens and kings, it's a much more refined energy, and a much more, the Queen of Swords is much more equipped to deal with her emotions and applying them to what comes out of her mouth that is sitting in her head than a page is, for instance. But the queen is a little more jaded. She has some wisdom, and so the page is completely curious and has mental agility. And that's the thing I want you to remember about pages, especially with the Page of Swords. It's mental agility. And when you are ready to explore new ways and new ideas and new ways to communicate, that's when it gets really, really sharp and good. It encourages sharp thinking and to stay open, and that's the key here, open to new information. Whereas you start getting into a knight, knights are definitely, especially the Knight of Swords, knows everything and you're not going to tell them anything. The page is open and receptive to all energies and all ways of thinking, and it's not pre-closing the deal, but more accepting and let me hear all facets of this situation before I finally come up with my active intellect and the thought that I'm going to file away in my brain about how I feel about it. And that is what is so important. So to counteract the Nine of Swords, that anxiety, I always, if the Page of Swords doesn't come up in the tarot reading, I talk about this card and I tell the person to reflect upon that card, because that is the antidote to the Nine of Swords. And it's just being youthful in the way you think and the way you process information, and not pre-closing the deal because of a past trauma that you've had, which is exactly why this is such a tough suit. So that's it, my friends. That is the Suit of Swords. We talked about a couple cards and just how tough it is. And I'm very excited to talk about the other suits in an upcoming season so you can balance it all out and you can start to see how these 4 suits make a well-balanced, perfect life. And then you start adding in major arcana with it, and we've got ourselves some major powerful stuff in tarot. And I live and breathe it. I've been doing it for over 40 years, and I love sharing it with each of you. So I hope that this has been something beneficial to you and that you've been able to glean some good knowledge out of it. All right, friends, and that is a wrap on Season 3 of An Intentional Spiritual Living with Brian. I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. These are topics of my life. I'm sharing a piece of my life with you. I'm not reading from books. I don't have a script. I write down on a piece of, if you could sit here with me, I have a piece of paper here for today that says Sunstone, Sacred Geometry, and Suit of Swords. Nothing more, because I live and breathe this stuff. This is what I love, and I love sharing it with you and demystifying the entire craft, if you will, because this is a way of life. I mean, of course, we all love the witchy aesthetic and the darky looking things, witches. Today I'm sitting at Raven's Cauldron in Marysville. We've got witches' hats, for instance, hanging at all different levels from the ceiling. I love that aesthetic, but it doesn't mean a lot. What means a lot is the spiritual living and how you digest this information, how you use crystals, how you use tarot cards, how you use runes, deities that you vibe with, all the things. And the craft is so huge, and it's growing at such a fast clip. And I'm an old person at 52 now, so I love to share my wisdom with you, and I hope that you enjoy it. We will be back for season 4, probably at the beginning of next year, this coming winter. And I've already sketched out in my book things that I want to talk about. We know 2 of them is I'm going to do a deep dive on the Suit of Pentacles and the Suit of Cups, and we will take it from there. But until such time, take care of one another, hug one another, be kind to one another. We're living in a crazy world, and I hope to see all of you in person soon. Take care.